Great. So we have the perfect person on here, Mary, coming up. We're going to be focused on uh, HIPAA, SMS, how to stay compliant while you're using AI messaging.
I'm here.
Hi, Mary. Hi, Jody. How you doing?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Great. So I know we have a big topic and maybe a Medicare update, if possible. If you can go through that, I'll let you take it away. But thanks for being here.
Certainly. I get my volume up. How's that?
Perfect.
Okay. Somebody's going to release our slides.
There you go.
Okay. Well, we're right there. Well, I'm Mary DeLong. I am the CEO and the founder of Business and Clinical Management Services, and I'd like to introduce Jody Spenninger. He is the VP of Client Compliance at BCMS, and he's going to lead off with AI scribing and scripting, opportunities and challenges.
Good deal. Thanks, Mary. I appreciate it. And thanks for Breakthrough for having us. I'm going to start off by discussing a few AI features commonly used in therapy clinics today when discussing some of the risks associated with these tools and the mitigating strategies to help reduce those risks. Go to the next slide, please. There we go. So let's look at some of the common terminology used with AI in therapy. What does it mean when by scripting versus scribing? And what exactly are you using in your clinics? Okay, the next. And so in this chart here, we're going to be looking at the summary of the differences. So on the right-hand side, we've got scripting. In the middle, we've got scribing. And then some features on the left-hand side, for example, purpose. What's the purpose of scribing, AI scribing? So it's to transcribe spoken words versus scripting, which would be to generate written content or dialogue. And so if we look at other features such as, the input, what we put into the AI, and versus the output, what AI gives back to us, and then some common uses, when looking at AI scripting, we have to give them prompts or content or to give that context of what we're trying to have them generate. And then the output that they give back to us is a structured script or narrative. And so the common use is the content creation and automation. But when we look at AI scribing, the input that we give is usually an audio or speech. And so the output is more of a text transcription. And so some of the common uses are the documentation and note-taking capabilities. Okay, next. And so I think the AI scribing is what we generally see in many of EMR add-ons in therapy practices right now. So if we're looking at AI scribing tools, which are also called medical scribes or documentation assistants, they automate the generation of clinical notes through ambient listening. And these AI additions to EMRs use natural language processing, speech recognition, and machine learning in order to transcribe sessions, summarize interactions, and integrate the data into the notes. Now, these tools are significantly help to improve efficiency by reducing the documentation time for therapists, allowing more focus on the patients themselves. Okay, the next. And so with that improved efficiency, we also have risks that we have to be aware of. And so the first risk we're going to talk about is the data privacy breaches. So AI listening tools record sensitive PHI in audio recordings, and this leads to risks that include unauthorized access, potential third-party breaches, improper storage of the recordings, or misuse of the de-identified data without consent. Now, another risk is inaccuracy and algorithm errors. So remember, when introducing third-party software into your processes, it can dilute some of your risk mitigation that you've got in place. Also, poorly reviewed notes can lead to misinformation, impact future patient interventions, and even implicate False Claims Act violations. Another key risk is the lack of patient consent and privacy concerns. So be aware of your state laws regarding conversation recording. Recording without explicit informed consent may violate patient privacy rights. patients may also be reluctant to fully disclose concerns due to constant monitoring of what they say. As with all AI, bias and discrimination is a risk. AI models learn from historical data. And if that data reflects societal biases, then the models could perpetuate that discrimination. And another risk is lack of transparency. So AI data is added into the big black box. And AI algorithms may lack explainable outputs and distorting audit trails. So such as AI hallucinations, which is basically AI gives output some information that it thinks is accurate and it's really not accurate at all. And you also have to be careful of resources that may be made up, or they may give resources that are broken links that don't go anywhere. Users must ensure that vendors maintain all required systems, application securities, and audit logs. And the last key risk we'll talk about is false claims and enforcement. So the Department of Justice scrutiny on AI-generated billing has led to subpoenas and settlements in other aspects of healthcare. So the lack of transparency in AI-generated billing decisions may increase liability. Okay, next. Thank you. So next, let's talk about those strategies that we want to try to reduce those risks. So you want to ensure third-party vendors utilize industry standard protocols and comply with the HIPAA and high-tech security regulations. And they do this by helping, for example, increase database security and also having system and organizational internal controls in place. Another strategy would be to, prior to evaluation treatment, obtain patient consent for conversation recording that leads to documentation. Another strategy would be conduct an AI risk assessment based on the NIST standards and ensure that the AI vendor provides access to audits and logs. And NIST is the National Institute for Standards and Technology. You can also obtain an AI vendor business associate agreement attesting to, among other things, ongoing HIPAA security rule compliance. Also, you want to educate and train all your personnel on AI-specific documentation outputs and obtain attestations that documentation reflects personal, clinical decision-making using AI as an efficiency tool. And then lastly, you want to monitor for bias by just reviewing what's coming out of the AI, looking at those outputs and making sure that there is no bias that you're seeing as they come through. And with that, I am done with mine. I'm going to turn it back over to Mary.
Thank you, Jody. And I'm going to be talking about short messaging and AI messaging, and both of them have compliance requirements. Next slide, please. So there are significant differences. There's a lot more than this, but this is all I can fit on a slide. And when we look at the delivery methods for SMS, typically we're dealing with a cellular network on mobile phones versus AI. I mean, certainly it can use cellular, but typically it relies on the internet and email, chat apps, web platforms, that type of thing. Is SMS empowered by AI? No, sometimes I wish it was. I use the voice command a whole lot, but it doesn't understand me very well, and I guess it's my Texas accent that does that. But the AI messaging absolutely is empowered by, because that's what we're talking about. There are a lot of content capability differences. When SMS was created, it was meant to be a quick answer and a quick response. And it had, a limit of characters. Now you can use multimedia services to add to that and get images and audios. And that's how we get the pictures of everything we eat, right? And all places you've been. So obviously it has that capability, but not in its basic form. AI messaging, of course, is robust, and it has not only all of these content capabilities, but it's real-time information and a lot of Q&A and recommendations, that type of thing. And interactivity, obviously, SMS was meant to be one way, like, hey, you're late, or I'm lost, or whatever, or you get back and forth, how do I get to your house? Well, let me tell you. And AI messaging, again, interactive. There's a lot of understanding of the context by AI, and it's very conversational. And finally, the common uses, again, quick conversations with SMS, and on AI, we're looking at consumer services, virtual assistants, and as I said before, a lot of Q&A. Let's go to the next slide that talks about requirements that are similar. So both of these messaging systems require PHI encryption. And I say this, that's pretty broad. If we go to HIPAA security rule, it says that it is an addressable implementation specification. And a lot of people think addressable means, well, I don't really have to do it, but that's not the fact. It just gives you some flexibility about how you do it. So if you look at the language in HIPAA, it says implement a mechanism to encrypt and decrypt. So that might mean you use a secure portal. That means you de-identify everything. But please let me warn you, we can de-identify, some PHI in it. But once you send that message to a patient, let's say, that's PHI. Their name is PHI. So how do you de-identify that? And so we have to remember, addressable means that you have to find some flexible way of making that not identifiable. Okay, the next slide, please. I think what's surprising to me is I would have thought, okay, AI has so much more control. I bet you there's a lot of regulations out there. But surprisingly, SMS is more stringent. And I guess that's because it's been around since, I think, like the 80s. So you've got federal regulations, you have consent requirements, very specific written consents for marketing. And then you have a lot of industry standards. Again, state laws have really become quite robust and very, very strict about SMS messaging. And enforcement, you'll see fines and lawsuits and those types of things. When we look at AI, I guess, again, because if it's newer status, it's more voluntary guidelines. And I'm going to state that is if there is no PHI. So both SMS and AI, if they include PHI, so protected health information, and communication maybe between providers or between a patient and a provider, if there is PHI, you must comply with HIPAA security regulations. Consent requirements on AI at this point varies according to the platform, and but it is required again if there's PHI. Industry standards, I love this one, and this is the best answer I could find to put into a little box. Emerging best practices. So I'm not sure, maybe we could ask some of our friends that presented just before us about what those best practices are. And as we said in state laws, it's very active for SMS, but it's not active. It's very inconsistent. But they are developing some specific focal points. And right now for AI, the enforcement is mostly advisory. However, there are some criminal penalties on the books. And let me take a moment to plug Jody's presentation at PPS. He has a session on compliance and AI, and he will be talking about some of the penalties that are out there regarding AI and also how they influence the False Claims Act. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Transparency. This is, sometimes you feel like it's an overused word, but I think it is so important here because there are risks. A lot of times people don't know that they're not talking to a real human being. More and more people understand that now, but especially maybe in your senior populations, they may not understand that. They also might not understand that some of the images or audio or whatever has been manipulated. And so that needs to be made identifiable. And there have implemented some visual labeling as well as digital watermarking. And some of this went into effect in August of this year. So let's go to the final slide here. So how are we supposed to be compliant with short messaging and AI messaging? And the first thing is we should conduct risk assessments, especially for your AI tools. But please do not bypass SMS, because if you need consents, because there's PHI, or if there is any interaction with the patient and they do not understand that anything they say or anything you say could be on the open internet without any protection, you certainly want to check and monitor those particular things in your risk assessment. Obviously, you have to comply with HIPAA when you're handling PHI and implement those AI logic protocols that we talked about in the previous slide. Monitor your state and federal laws and adjust policies as needed. And so this is so important. Educate your personnel on the ethical use of AI and obtain these patient recording consents. So critically important that you do that. That is a violation of most state laws. And employees need to understand that if we use this incredibly valuable tool, we need to be right up front with the patient and telling them how and what is being recorded. And I think Jody had alluded to patients may be hesitant in telling you everything if they think they're being recorded. And if you're interested in obtaining a consent form for scribing or messaging, you can contact either Alicia Mahoney or Jody, and they can get you copies of those if you'd like those. Let's move on to Medicare. So Medicare physician fee schedule, the interim rule was released in July, and the final rule is slated to be released early November. Well, here's the update on that. Right now, it might be delayed. Well, why is that? Well, the reason is the government remains closed. There are a lot of personnel who are the busy bees behind all of this, and getting this type of document, typically it runs about 2,000 pages. It is quite challenging when you don't have a full staff. One thing that I was told by at the APTA was that they've heard that they may release it in sections. So when it gets to the Office of Management and Budget, they may not have all the parts and pieces. So we may get the most essential parts of that released, and it might be at kind of an intermittent basis. So that's where we are, is the release of that. But I do want to talk on claims payment. That's hot on everybody's mind. Medicare has resumed. Can you give me my slide back? Here we go. Medicare has resumed paying eligible claims. So that means claims that there's no errors or anything like that on for dates of service from October 1st forward. And they will be holding all claims, however, that have federally expired provisions. So a good example of that is telehealth. So it expired September 30th. And so telehealth, as it stands right now, except for behavioral and mental health, doesn't exist for payment. And since it is non-covered at this point, yes, the answer is you may use an ABN and bill the patient for it as long as that provision is still expired. And for us, the physician fee schedule did not include recognizing therapists as eligible for permanent telehealth delivery. So for us, we're going to have to see a legislative change, unfortunately. But on the good note here is some non-traditional, so that's not traditional Medicare, claims for telehealth might be paid. We've heard that there are some being paid. It's based on payer policy. So this would be your Medicare Advantages, your commercials, or any other payer that has been paying telehealth since all the COVID waivers. So that's the good news about it. And that pretty much wraps it up, I believe. Let me see, go down another slide. Oh, no, I left a big part out. Golly, I don't know my slide. So this is what was released in the interim rule. We did get a little raise, about 3%, a little bit more than 3%. From the previous year. And Chad and I talk about this all the time. We went down, 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 and we're finally kind of climbing up, but we're not up to where we were about 10 years ago, right?
We're not. We were in 1994, Mary.
Yeah. Oh, well, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It's pretty sad. The KX threshold, just as a reminder, in 26 will be 2480. We still are splitting that with speech and language. And if ever y'all wanted to make a change that would be nice, it would be good to write your legislators and said, please put the comma in. It should have been PT, speech, language, and pathology, and OT. Each have 2480. They missed the comma. And the same thing holds for manual medical review threshold, 3,000 PT and speech and language, flip that 3,000 OT, just like in the KX threshold has the entire amount. And on that manual medical threshold, remember, that's not automated. It doesn't happen. They don't audit you right away. They're looking for aberrant billing behavior plus going over 3,000 or whatever part is left for, between PT and speech. And as I said, in the interim rule, therapists are not included as permanent providers of telehealth. Okay, and the next slide. That's about us. Please take a moment to read that. We don't have time for commercials right now, but we do and would love to have you as clients if you're not already. There's a lot of contact information. And remember, if you do want those consent forms, some templates of those, please contact Alicia or Jody. All right.
Mary and Jody, thank you so much for doing this. How about some love for Mary and Jody for keeping us compliant here in private practice? Thank you so much for doing this and giving us the update.
Our pleasure. Thank you.